All right. We're calling to order the Bothell Planning Commission meeting for December 17th. It's great to see everybody here. I see we have a lot of people in the audience. I don't know if everyone had a chance to get some of the agendas, but you can see what order we'll be going through things. And we'll give everybody a chance to speak in just a few minutes when we get there. So first, for any non-agenda public comments, is there anyone here that has comments about items that are not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none. Any approval of minutes? And I don't believe that we have any minutes to approve. Dave, do we have any new business?
No.
No new business? All right. So then at this point, we will continue the public hearing on the 2015 Periodic Plan and Code Update. And with that, Dave, would you like to start us off with a presentation? And then shortly after that, we'll open it up to public comment.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, and thank all of you for coming out, and to those of you also who've sent me your comments already. It's unusual that we get this kind of a turnout at a Planning Commission meeting. So, tonight, this is the second review of the Wayneta-Simons-Norway Hill Sub-Area Plan, which includes 4 potential land use designation and code amendments, and that's going to be the primary, if not sole, focus of tonight's meeting. We had an initial review on November 19th, at which time Planning Commission did agree to move these 4 potential code amendments and plan and code amendments forward. So Wayneta Simons Norway Hill is in the southernmost. It's the southernmost sub area within the city limits. The 4 proposals that we're going to be looking at tonight are the Wayne Golf Course rezone and code amendment proposal, the North Riverside rezone and code amendment proposal, the Easton Avenue rezone proposal, and the South Riverside rezone proposal.
Can you raise that up a little bit?
The image?
The wall there is blocking our view. Your camera.
I have to apologize for that. I am not able to raise the image. I formatted this in a way that doesn't put the image as low as some other projections do, but that's actually a good point. I've been meaning to ask the tech folks if we can get that up to the top of the screen, but I don't have that capability. I'm sorry. So the sub-area, just a quick background on the sub-area. It comprises 1,499 acres, and I did want to point out that the November 19th presentation and the draft plan had erroneous errors, but this is the correct area. No changes have been made to the draft sub-area plan that was presented on November 19th, but that did include housekeeping amendments, other amendments to reflect preliminary changes made in planning area-wide element recommendations. There's 1 staff proposed land use designation and code amendment, and there were 4 property owner requests, 3 of which the Planning Commission approved for further consideration. So those 4 total are coming back to you tonight, and that will be the focus of tonight's hearing. We propose to present and consider the 4 proposals separately in the order that we received them with the staff request last. So we'll start with the Wayne Golf Course proposal, shown by the 1 on the map there. Move on to the Easton Avenue request, number 2. Then number 3, the South Riverside request. And finally, the North Riverside request, number 4. So at the end of each, and so the way this will work is I'll give a brief presentation, kind of setting the stage for each of these requests. And at the end of each rezone proposal, Planning Commission then may decide to either move forward with a recommendation Two, continue deliberations to February 25th, which is the first available evening that we have. In fact, I would like to get some input from Planning Commission. That would be the fourth Planning Commission meeting in February, so it could be either February 25th or the first Wednesday in March. So if there's any preference there, it would be good to have that. And of course, if you're continuing, providing us with direction on additional analysis needed would be very helpful. Or three, and this was something that Commissioner Cabe brought up this afternoon, and I had a chance to discuss it with the Community Development Director and other staff. So there is an option to recommend to Council deferring further action on any of these until after the 2015 Periodic Plan and Code Amendment update. So in that case, work could continue in fall of 2015, but adoption couldn't happen until 2016. So we might also entertain input from the proponents whether that timeline would be acceptable to them. But this was basically if Commission feels like any of these code amendments are too complicated to deal with in this time frame, that is a potential option. And it wouldn't require the applicants to go through the typical application process. That will have already been initiated through this process, but we would be able to pick up these items again in the fall of 2015. The reason adoption can't happen until 2016 is that the Periodic Plan and Code update will be the one comp plan amendment that we're allowed in 2015. So we'll have to wrap that into the work that's going to take place in 2016. So, with that, I'm going to give a brief presentation here on the Wayne Golf Course request. They requested an amendment to allow development of a new clubhouse and a conceptual proposal for 76 townhomes on a 4.1 acre tract surrounding the existing clubhouse that is not subject to the conservation easement restrictions for the rest of the front 9. And included in your packet, Exhibit WS1 was their proposal. The conservation easement was included in the packet as WS11. And I've got some more information that I want to share with you on that now. Some of the comments I got questioned whether the conservation easement would in fact allow the kind of development that they're proposing, and whether this clubhouse area was subject to the restrictions of the conservation easement. We've reviewed that more carefully, and it's quite clear from the conservation easement that the property, the 4.1 acre property, was not subject to the conservation values, conveyance of conservation values, and the repeal of development rights. In fact, it quite clearly states that the development rights, the grantor, in this case Wayne Golf Course, did not grant development rights for that 4.1 acres. There is a phrase in the section, the relevant section there, that perhaps which creates some confusion. It talks about the grantor, the intent of possibly in the future replacing or renovating the clubhouse and area and the parking area, but there's nothing in the document that limits those development rights that were reserved to simply a renovation or replacement of the clubhouse. So, and I have gotten an opinion from the city attorney on that. He agrees that we're reading that properly. And the map here in the lower left corner, I know it's hard to read. This is the King County Assessor's map that labels the main part of the front nine as subject to the conservation easement, and the clubhouse area here as not subject to the conservation easement. So and then the photo in the lower right there shows the area. As you see in the aerial photo, the V-shaped path structure there. Well, you see that again in this photograph, which was taken from 96th Avenue Northeast. So the proposal that we have made, staff has made, based on this application, is to extend the SR 522 corridor zoning from the downtown sub-area and essentially to extend the downtown sub-area to include this 4.1 acre parcel and another about 0.3 acre parcel along Red Brick Road Park, which is already in the 522 corridor, to this area, thus allowing the proposed development. In the analysis that is in your packet, there was some discussion of reasonable alternatives, including the original proposal was for RAC OPNB zoning, a rezone to RAC OPNB. We thought that this really isn't an activity center, and the RAC zoning was intended for activity centers. So we thought a better fit was the 522 corridor zoning. But that is an option that's open to the Planning Commission, as well as potentially our 2800 OPNB, which would not allow the 76 townhomes proposed. It would allow possibly 60 or 62 townhomes, and even our 4,000, which is what the zoning is across 96th Avenue Northeast, would be an option, but that would only allow about 40 units. So again, there's the staff recommendation. Along with the recommended extension of the 522 district, we propose some amendments to the auto-oriented uses allowed. Currently, restaurants in the 522 district are limited to fast food restaurants with takeout or drive-through functions only. And we've actually struggled with that in other parts of the 522 corridor with some proposals that have come forward from potential businesses, and we feel that there's a way to define that auto-oriented restaurants, including fast food, drive-through, and takeout, but opening that up enough to include things like the clubhouse restaurant, restaurants that are tied to other uses, recreational uses like the golf course or potentially say a kayak rental facility along the Sammamish River. So the golf courses proposal, this is the layout showing the 76 townhomes. This is a very early conceptual scheme, but and there's a photograph of the clubhouse as it is today, and a couple of images. They included several images of both the clubhouse in the upper left and townhome development. Not exactly what it would look like, but just examples of images of what it could look like. So since the packet went out, we've received 5 new comments, and I believe at least one more tonight, but I've already distributed to you Exhibit WS12, an email from Dr. Robert Tadlock, Exhibit WS14, a letter from Judy Carpenter, Exhibit WS16, a letter from Tim Tobin, and Exhibit WS17, an email from Anthony Tran and Deanna Dom. Today, since I emailed you those exhibits yesterday, I received a letter today, Exhibit WS21, from Dennis Skovstad. So I'm going to pass those out, and I do have some copies for those in attendance as well as the planning commissioners. And while I do that, I will introduce the representatives here from Wayne Golf Course to give their presentation of their proposal, and then we will open it up to the public testimony. But before I do that, any questions of me on my presentation?
Do you guys have any questions?
Yeah, thanks, David. Some of the exhibits you sent to us yesterday discussed issues with the traffic that already present, and then we're adding potential residents to that area. Have you guys looked at a traffic plan for this area and determined that the existing capacity could withstand this added development near the interchange?
In general, we are looking at traffic capacity as part of the general plan update, and we're doing traffic modeling, and that is focused on our concurrency corridors, which are 522 Bothell Way, Bothell Everett Highway, Beardsley, east of 104th, in this area. Juanita 96, Juanita 100th is not one of our concurrency corridors. So when we do traffic concurrency analysis of developments, it's based on those corridors, and the pinch point here is the signal at 96th and 522. So that would certainly be analyzed as part of any development proposals here. We will be we have begun the discussion with our transportation planners about which of these rezones will merit some specific analysis per the model, but our experience has been that these rezones in the where we're adding capacity of less than 100 units, or maybe even a higher threshold than that, don't reach the level of really justifying a separate run of the traffic modeling, that the capacity analysis takes into account that level of incremental additions to the traffic. What we would look at in the project level review, when we get to that point, is how the project would impact that signal on the nearest signal on the concurrency corridor, and what kind of frontage improvements, roadway improvements, could be required of the development itself. For example, adding a third lane, so that there would be a left turn lane in the center. So that's basically how the traffic concerns would be analyzed and addressed.
One other question. The remaining 46 acres for which City of Bothell owns the development rights, if that was to be turned into a park later, or maintained in open space in one fashion or another, how would you access that open space? Would we still be coming through what now is the Wayne Golf Course entrance, or?
I think if
that's down the road, but I'm just curious.
I think if that were to be proposed, we would be having some sort of a dialogue with the owners of that property about whether that access could be provided through their parking area, whether it would be done via Red Brick Road Park and Burke-Gilman Trail. What other access points there are around the perimeter of the golf course that we could use.
Anybody else? Eric?
Thank you, Commissioner Stahl. Thank you, Dave, for the presentation. I appreciate that. I have a couple quick questions, I hope. Maybe in a little more detail about Commissioner McCabe's question about, I'm curious to know what the appropriateness of the detailed review of traffic and other and environmental issues is at the comprehensive plan or rezone level as opposed to at the project level. It is true that every project that is proposed to the city of Bothell will be reviewed at that level in great detail with respect to traffic and environmental through the SEPA process or something like that. Is that correct?
That's correct, and so there's going to be two levels of review. As part of the comp plan update, we'll be doing a SEPA analysis, supplemental EIS to the previous one that was done to reflect the changes that are made in this update. And then the project level would also go through a SEPA analysis. The areas within the downtown plan, we will either have to do a supplemental EIS if we do this extension of the downtown plan, do a supplemental to the planned action EIS. And once that's done, the projects don't go through their own full EIS review. They go through a planned action determination review.
So doing a rezone or a comprehensive plan amendment does not necessarily mean that a project that is proposed will be approved. It goes through a separate approval process.
Correct.
That may or may not have traffic issues or anything like that.
That's right. And I did want to include the proponents' illustration of their concept of what they would like to do there, but we haven't done a full review of this to determine whether it is compliant, would be compliant with these regulations. That would happen later.
I noticed that, can you turn back to that page that you were on that showed the overall property? That one right there. What's in yellow there? Is that the shoreline jurisdiction adjacent to Sammamish River?
The kind of the orangey yellow down along the river?
Yep.
Yeah, that's the shoreline jurisdiction, so I'm glad you brought that up. It shows that the 4.1 acres does extend, I don't know, maybe 60 feet into the shoreline jurisdiction. It doesn't extend as far as the 100-foot buffer from the Sammamish River, so there would be shoreline review of any development proposal on this.
So they could develop this parcel without impacting the 100-foot buffer to that area south is
right.
Not this
is the 200-foot
excluded. Is that correct?
This is the 200-foot shoreline jurisdiction, and then so halfway along that would be the 100-foot no build buffer.
Okay. And then in reading some of the exhibits, I had a question about adjacent properties. I noticed that the conservation easement has a discussion about view corridors and that kind of thing, and the view corridors will be kept in in a reasonable condition. Was there any in that easement? Was the clubhouse area part of that corridor preservation? Was that a completely separate issue?
It's not. It's excluded from that from the transfer of development rights and from the conservation values. So the view corridors apply to the part of the property that is subject to all of those conservation easement restrictions.
Can you talk a little bit, and maybe this isn't the right place, maybe we just need to have some additional information, but kind of the key differences between what you're calling the 522 corridor zoning versus the applicant's request, and I guess I'd also be interested in hearing if the applicant cares to come up and do testimony tonight about how they feel about what you're recommending as opposed to what their request was. But are there major differences in terms of the development potential of the property one way or the other?
Well, the RAC zoning doesn't have a set height limit, so different RAC zones in different parts of the city are given different height limits. More often than not, it's a 65-foot height limit, but there are places where a 35-foot height limit is imposed. So if we were to go that way, we would probably be talking about a 35 or 45 foot height limit, which the 522 district requirements are for a 40. The base requirement is a 4-story, 45-foot height limit, but within the shoreline jurisdiction, it's 3 stories and 35 feet. So it would have to step down if they did build into that area. And there's also some, without getting into a lot of detail, there's some differences on how the downtown plan measures height and how we do it citywide that would impact it to some degree.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions from the commission? David.
Yes, Dave. How much of the that property of the 4.1 acres, I guess, lies within the 100-year floodplain?
I have not done a floodplain analysis. I've been focused on the shoreline jurisdiction and the conservation easement issues. Okay.
And I guess just reading through that conservation easement that was passed back in 1996, it just says, it seems to me that although maybe in legal terms it's not really blocking the view corridor, I don't know. I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around that. And that, I don't know, it's kind of on the front part of the corridor coming in from the east, but according to the lawyer, that doesn't infringe upon that. Is that correct?
Well, it's just not subject to those restrictions. So,
okay.
But if you looked at the whole golf course and applied our shoreline regulations to that, the requirement is for a quarter of the property to be preserved as corridors. Typically, now in this case, of course, the conservation easement applies to the whole thing. But if you look at the whole golf course, there's far more than a quarter of their total property is being preserved as a view corridor. Both on the 96 side and particularly on the 522 side.
Okay. And just lastly, I'm not too familiar with it, but there was a back 9 just recently, right? That was acquired by a developer. Is that correct?
I don't know if any sale has been completed yet, but it has been put on the market. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the commission? Okay, David.
So the next step would be to hear from the proponent, and there are representatives from the Wayne Golf Course here. I'm going to leave this image up for them and any other speakers to use. I would encourage people to use the mouse as a pointer. Don't click or roll the roller, but you can use that as a pointer. That way, people looking at home can see what you're pointing at. If you use the laser pointer, they cannot. And I'll pass out the exhibits that I have listed here, or on the previous page.
My name is Bruce Richards. I'm up here on behalf of my brother Dave Richards, my nephew Steve Richards. Our family has owned this property. My father actually purchased it in 1950, and we have operated it as a golf course ever since. I hope a lot of you have had an opportunity to play it and have enjoyed it. We have definitely enjoyed being part of the community and operating that golf course. It was very successful for many, many years. Unfortunately, the golf business has changed dramatically. And where we used to have anywhere from 100 to 200 people a day play the golf course, unfortunately, in the most recent years, it's a small fraction of that number. The reason we are here today and appreciate the opportunity to request the change in the plan is that we would like to redevelop and upgrade the golf course. And part of the key to doing that is the opportunity to develop the the area not encumbered by the easement, the area where the clubhouse is and where we would hope to have a new clubhouse and restaurant that would serve the entire facility. The plan for the golf course, as some of you know, the city spoke with us and talked back in 1996 about acquiring it, and the city decided that they did not want to acquire the golf course. They wanted to acquire the development rights and give us the opportunity to continue to run the golf course, which is what we've done. My brother Dave operated the golf course from, I think, 1960 until about 97, and then his son Steve Richards has been operating it since then. Our hope is to have a facility that would work in today's times. Probably, we don't have the details, but probably something in the neighborhood of an executive golf course, or perhaps 18 holes of par threes with practice greens and putting facility that would meet the demands of today's golfers. Ken Bellamy is a real estate consultant who has worked with us in trying to develop the plan for the entire property, and he's much more familiar than I am with exactly what we would have in mind for the part that is not affected by the easement. I would just tell you that our hope is to have a golf facility that would be viable and would be good for the community for a long time to come. Thank you.
Thank you. So at this point, then, do we have any questions? Eric?
I have a question for the proponent, and you might want one of the other people in your party to answer this, but have you had a chance to review the city's recommendation, the staff recommendation that they're making versus what your original proposal was?
Yes, we have.
And what do you have any thoughts about how you perceive that?
Pardon, can you come to the and be sure to speak into the microphone so that it's picked up and people at home can hear it too?
Yes, we have reviewed it, and it's acceptable to us.
Pardon, and can you state your name and whether or not you're a citizen, resident of Bothell?
My name is Ken Bellamy, and I'm a resident of Kirkland.
Thank you.
So, so you are okay with the
Yes,
what
we
they're
are.
recommending? Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from commissioners? All right, well, at this point, I'd like to take more public testimony. I can see we've got a lot of people here. I believe, Dave, did you start a list?
Sorry.
We've got a lot of people, and we want to hear from everybody. To keep everything moving, Dave's running a list there, and we'll just go down the list. When you come up, be sure to speak into the microphone so that we can be picked up. Yes, please speak into the microphone, state your name, and whether you're a resident of Bothell. Keep in mind that this is still preliminary. You can tell we're gathering a lot of information here. Try to keep it to 3 minutes. If you agree with a previous speaker, it's perfectly fine to just say that. I agree with so-and-so and leave it at that, and that makes the point very clearly. So at this point, I guess, do we want to do them in this specific order?
Yeah.
Then here, maybe I should leave that so that, or do you want me to just call them out?
You want me to butcher the names?
Yes, very true.
The first on the list is Tim Tobin.
Tim Tobin, 9430 Hoder Lane in Bothell. This is a bad deal for the community. Our argument against this rezone has nothing to do with the property owners. They may be the world's most wonderful people. It has not necessarily anything to do with the specific proposal. That's just a piece of paper. It can be ripped up. Whatever you zone is what can be built. And whether it's done by this golf course owner or whoever buys that property in the future, that's what's going to be built there. And if they can put an auto repair shop down there because it's 522, then that's what they'll put there. This community has a contract with the golf course. It's called a conservation easement, and it is a contract paid for almost $900,000 back in 1996. Continues to get favorable property tax treatment, 90% less taxable land value. And that part of it, right there, everybody says in part of this agreement, is part of that agreement, and it is part of that tax break. And you can look, there's plenty of documents to assert that. That easement is for open space forever. It's perpetuity. That is going to be there forever. That view corridor was supposed to be there forever. That part right there is so key to that view corridor. If you've ever stood there, if you've ever gone down that path, you know that is key to it. You can't take out the whole corridor and not wipe out the view corridor. But that easement is so restrictive, you can't even turn dirt out there. You can't do anything other than what is absolutely necessary to run a golf course. So if they want to build a clubhouse, if they want to build a parking lot, there had to be some provision in this agreement, and it's Section 7 in this agreement, that allowed them to do that. And it says very clearly here what the intent was. It is envisioned someday that we're going to do something with the clubhouse and the parking lot. It didn't say it was envisioned someday that we're going to rezone this and have high-density housing or businesses or whatever. I mean, I would have killed the deal then. Okay, it's going to kill the deal now. This is a wonderful asset for this community. It's open space. You can't get this anymore. It's going to be there forever. And if you take out that whole corner, it's gone for a view preservation corridor. Just count how many times view preservation corridor is listed in those documents. It's a key proponent of it. But you know what? You can do a view preservation corridor if you're only going to put in a clubhouse. You can see around that. You can see around a restaurant there. But you can't see around a wall of townhouses, a wall of commercial businesses. This whole thing boils down to, are you going to preserve a community asset? You're under no obligation to upzone this. That 9600, they can put a clubhouse in there. They can put a restaurant in there for the clubhouse. Conditional use permits, all they got to get. That's liable with the golf course under 9600. So they can upgrade that golf course with the current zoning. Do not change that zoning and open Pandora's box. I mean, you will kick yourselves the rest of the time you live in this community when you think about what's going to end up being built there. And again, God love the Richards and what they've done for the community. This is not about that. This is about what you're going to do with a precious asset. We have a contract. The deal's a deal. It was understood what that was going to be. I disagree with the city attorney. I disagree with city staff. It's very clear in here that the intent on this was not to open up Pandora's box. It was to be able to do more things like a clubhouse and golf and parking. But even if you disagree with that, just don't be the enablers. Because if you change the zoning, you are the enablers. They have to deal with what they got now, and if the city attorney says they can put single-family house down there, fine. But don't be the enablers. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So next up is Dennis Skofstad, followed by Dr. Robert Tadlock.
Thanks for the opportunity to speak. I am Dennis Skofstad. I do live across the street from the Wayne Golf Course clubhouse in the village at Riverbend. I enjoy a view of the golf course every single day. I walk the Burke-Gilman Trail. I drive Route 522 past the Wayne Golf Course. I'm kind of disappointed that the city chose not to inform me of this potential rezoning because I live more than 300 feet from the clubhouse. But nevertheless, and I do appreciate and understand Dave's point that the 4 acres outlined on the map here with a dotted red line is not subject to the easement that the city signed, bought, and paid for. But I think the proposed development, as Tim has said, will have enormous influence on that easement, which remains a signed contract. For example, the proposal envisions bocce ball courts. The easement contract that you have at WS11 prohibits, and I quote from the contract, ball fields and courts. That's on page 3, paragraph 2C. For example, the proposed 3-story, perhaps 35-foot townhouse barrier between Route 522, the Burke-Gilman Trail, the Red Brick Road, and the golf course is in violation of the contract's page 2, paragraph 2, requirement 2, and I quote from the easement, prevent any use that will significantly impair a view corridor. So once again, I'm suggesting that building 2 or 3-story townhouses as a barrier between the view corridor that the city bought and the public is in violation of the contract. See also page 6, paragraph 6B of the contract, in which Bothell is obligated to, and again I quote from the contract, obligated to maintenance of the view from the Burke-Gilman Trail. Please note that in that same contract, page 7, paragraph 9, spells out that Bothell may sue for, and again I quote, damages for the loss of scenic or aesthetic values. And again, I understand the 4 acres has been exempted from the easement, but nevertheless, building 2 and 3-story townhouses on this thing will have enormous impacts on the city ownership of that view easement. Note further that the contract, page 11, paragraph 20, defines the conservation easement as a view corridor and as site access. 2 or 3-story townhouses between Route 522, the Burke-Gilman Trail, and the Red Brick Road Park and the golf course completely eliminate any site access across those 4 acres. I urge the Commission to reject the proposal. Thank you.
Next is Dr. Robert Tadlock, followed by Sarah Glarum.
Well, first of all, I have trouble imagining an Ivers or a McDonald's on this 522. It appears that could happen, however, as I listened to Dave this evening. I'm speaking against the rezone of the Wayne Golf Course, Dr. Robert Tadlock, Village of River Bend, but I'm speaking about the traffic issues. There's been a considerable housing development on the 100th Avenue northeast, from northeast Bothell, northeast 145th, which is Bothell's southern border, all the way up through Waynita Way. It's now gone all the way to the Wayne Golf Course. The hills that were rolling farmlands and Hopkins Nursery are now totally covered by housing developments. Many of the houses have 2 to 3 car garages. And if you've been there lately, you can imagine what used to be the rolling hills is now nothing but paved over Bothell housing development. There are still other developments that are approved and are just getting started, such as Piper's Glen. All of them are getting ready to, quote, throw themselves onto Waynita Way, 96th Avenue, so that they will result in the addition of hundreds of more cars, which will be on that traffic corridor. The rush hour on this road is extremely heavy, and at times the total gridlock is so involved that it involves both directions of the road. If you try to merge onto the traffic from either direction, it's often a challenge or a test just coming from a side road from Waynita Way. Recently, travel from my home near the Sammamish River Bridge to the Evergreen Hospital took 45 minutes. That's 3.5 miles. The gridlock was unbelievable. The small winding arterial was no match for the amount of traffic that was on that road. There's also no way that any emergency vehicles could go up and down that road. They could not travel it since both sides were occupied. Fire, police, or medical vehicles have no place to go because of the traffic. The safety and well-being of the residents depend on emergency response, and any new housing developments, even if they were up by this proposed development, along this corridor would create a traffic standstill so that even a wider Sammamish bridge would not accommodate them. The only open space or green space left for the citizens of Bothell appears to be, in our area, the southern part of Bothell, the Wayne Golf Course. There should be no development or rezone of this space, and particularly no housing development. Bothell needs to do everything possible to preserve this land before everything is paved over. Bothell citizens chose to live in this part of the city because of the open space and the proximity to the hospital and medical care and emergency vehicles. Right now, if you try to go down that in the afternoon, evening, or in the morning, you could never get an emergency vehicle there. It's totally impacted by cars. Thank you.
Sarah Glarum, followed by Jesse Spears.
I'm Sarah Glarum. I live on Riverbend Drive, basically across the street from the Wayne Golf Course clubhouse area. I'm here basically to talk today about the traffic, and I do agree with the speakers who have gone before me. But as a resident of Bothell who uses 96 and Wayneta Way as the only way to leave my home, I have grave reservations about contemplating a zoning change that would allow higher residential density without first conducting that modeling of traffic, that detailed traffic analysis, not waiting for a project and then doing it. The street is called a collector street in this proposal. And it certainly is that. It collects anybody who wants to go from the east side to the west side to the east side to get onto 520. But ever since the tolling on Highway 520 over the Lake Washington, the floating bridge, and that started less than 3 years ago. That started the 29th of December in 2011. The traffic on our road has, I won't say exponentially because that could get me in trouble, but it has desperately grown. It has increased enormously. And if you have never driven on that road at rush hour, either morning or evening, try it sometimes and see what happens when you try to make a left turn, if you're going toward Kirkland, a left turn onto Riverbend Drive, and how you, as one car, can completely stop the traffic all the way back to the traffic light at Bothell Way. For my neighbors and me, Wayneta and 96 is not a collector. It is a lifeline. And I implore you to please do the appropriate traffic studies that would be required before you add any residential or any other kind of density to that zone. Thank you.
Jesse Spears, followed by Carl Frere.
Hi, my name is Jesse Sears. I'm a resident of the Valhalla neighborhood. I live at 16220 Valhalla Drive. I'm here to speak against the rezoning of Wayne's Golf Course. I can tell you, I moved here for the recreational and green space opportunities and bought my house where it was because of that. In fact, I love Wayne's Golf Course, and I love playing there. I was a member 1 year. I was a member of the men's club there. I disagree with what's trying to be happening right now because of degradation of ancestral funds that were put forth to purchase development rights, and then on top of that, the tax agreements that have gone through for this property forward. I agree with them that they need an injection of some way to be able to make it viable, and I think that building a clubhouse in some way would be very appropriate to make this work, not a full development of what's actually happening. I'm here in particular to talk about portions of the proposal that has come forward from the staff. and the pre-conclusions that was made public before this meeting. The Planning Commission should address the following questions and answer them before a decision is put forward, and those decisions I feel that should be made public. The first thing is what can be built on the property current zoning of R96 without a rezone? And could this current zoning meet the goals set forth by the landowner? Basically what I'm getting at here is that according to the Bothell Municipal Code 12.06.130, golf courses and driving ranges are contractual use under this current R96 zoning. Golf courses traditionally have a clubhouse, and they have a rental and retail restaurant and bar a part of that, just like the current clubhouse that is operating underneath this current zoning law. And I'd like to put that forward right here for that. The next question that I have, I'll make a pile here for you. The next question that I have is, does the rezone and proposal projects provide a benefit to the majority of the general public? And the key aspect of this is the citizens of Bothell and King County put forward a large sum of money in 1996, just like we heard about, just below $900,000 to preserve the development rights and make the contractual easement that is set forth here. The other side of this is in 1997, this land was assessed and given a tax assessment in the contractual open space taxation agreement with the City of King County. This document is not in your proposal, and you guys do not have it forward in front of you. What this is taxation is it quotes an acreage of 50.3 acres that the Richardsons have been given a 90% discount on their taxation since 1996 on. That includes the clubhouse area here. All right? The definition of that is the property is a golf course. It contains 9 holes of 18-hole golf course, a clubhouse, storage buildings, and gravel parking lot. Is the definition of the taxation agreement with King County here. All right? I'd like to see that addressed before we move forward with the zoning property here. Next question, number 3, is does the rezoning have any negative impacts on the neighboring owners? Transportation corridor, which we've already heard. And does the cost of upgrading surrounding infrastructure due to increased population density? All right? Does the rezoning open any doors that is less favorable for the use for the general public? Could the rezoning negate the open space agreement and conservation easements leading to a loss of each to the public for which we paid for? And there's sections of it that talk towards that. And could the result, could this result come back in penalties that need to be paid by the City of Bothell and its taxpayers to King County, who gave us the money for the original agreement? It's also in there. How does the rezone affect the conservation easement and the open space taxation agreement? How would the rezone affect the first right of refusal granted to the city for the conservation easement for the clubhouse area? If we rezone it, what will actually happen for our right to have the first right of refusal of that? All right? And then also, has the Planning Commission explored options of exercising its first right of refusal for the clubhouse area and under the current zoning? What are the economic potential for letting the City Parks Department run this? And could this course be a money generator for the city like Maplewood Golf Course is for the City of Renton? Also, the impacts of this rezoning policy is what it has on fire and rescue. And I'd like to speak truly to this. I'm a firefighter for the City of Renton. And I know for a fact that my Valhalla neighborhood has some of the slowest response times coming out of Station 42 of anywhere in the City of Bothell. And I think this is a big deal. We've heard about it because of traffic issues, and we've heard about it for life safety issues. And this needs to be explored on the impact with the population density before we move forward in this area. What's the impacts on schools? All right, we already have overcrowded schools in this area. What's the impact of the increased things? What's the impact on public works? And what's King County's take on the agreement that we have with King County and with the City of Bothell on both the conservation easement and the taxation assessment? On top of that, the fish and wildlife. We talked a little bit about the 300-foot setback, or the 200-foot setback, excuse me, here. What's the impact of the fish and wildlife? And then on top of that, the tribal concerns. We've already had problems with tribal concerns with downtown. What are they going to say about this too? The Planning Commission should deny this rezoning proposal and projects as they do not meet the conservation easement and or the open space agreement, taxation agreement of Wayne's Golf Course. And they could be preserved for the future intent, just like they were both written to do. Like I said, I moved to Bothell for the green space and the open space. I love Wayne's Golf Course. I'd love to see him develop a clubhouse there, but I'd like to see him do it the right way with the contracts that we have in place currently. Thank you.
Thank you. And can we get those added to our exhibit list?
Yes. So let's, Mr. Sears' statement, enter that as Exhibit 22. He's provided a copy of the conservation easement, which he'd already emailed to me. I'm going to be, that's already an exhibit, that's Exhibit 11, but I'm going to expand on that and get you a better, more readable copy than the one you've got, or this one, which also has an unofficial document stamp. So I won't enter that, but I will get a more complete and readable copy of the conservation easement. So then Exhibit 23 would be the open space taxation agreement. And the other piece was an excerpt from our code, 1206-130. I'll go ahead and enter that as Exhibit 24, but I'll probably also include in the next packet a more complete and detailed analysis of the zoning issues.
Thank you.
So next up is Carl Frere, followed by Jeff Hughes. Mr. Frere has also provided a document here, so we'll enter that as Exhibit 25.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Carl Frere. I do live in Valhalla at 16211 Valhalla Drive. Longtime resident of Bothell. I am against the rezone as well, and for the following reasons. Two significant life events happened to me in 1978. The first one was my wife was born right in Lake Forest Park, not too far away. And the other one was my family packed up everything we owned and moved from California right here to Bothell, and I was 6 years old. Growing up, my wife and I spent time with our families in Bothell. We would frequent Bothell Landing, picnic at Blythe Park, and browse the shops downtown. Our parents were drawn to Bothell because of the strong sense of community and abundance of natural spaces. These became values my wife and I would both embrace and desire. 13 years ago, I met my wife and we were married. 15 months ago, we were blessed with our first daughter and are expecting her little sister in May. After we had married, we knew without a doubt Bothell was where we wanted to live and raise those children. The reasons why that we discussed were unanimous. Bothell has maintained the sense of community, strong values for education, and the integrity of the environment that drew our parents here years ago and is the sole reasons that we as parents choose to raise our children here. Progress dictates change, yet what has seemingly remained intact is the ongoing commitment to preserve the original identity of Bothell through its evolution. It's that continued commitment to the community and, most importantly, the environment that I hope this commission respectfully regards with any future progression and or development. Thank you.
Next is Jeff Hughes, followed by Trevor Albertson.
Thank you, guys. A lot of things have already been covered, so I won't repeat them. One of the things I wanted to ask, though, you brought up a good point about access to the golf course and access to the Burke-Gilman Trail. To me, that's not clear right now. I know a lot of people in my Valhalla neighborhood go up the road and access the Burke-Gilman Trail that way, and I'm sure some of the other neighbors do too. It seems that building another neighborhood would cut that off. Another concern I have is, excuse me, I don't see any parking for the golf course included in their plan, and I don't see how you can actively run a business without a parking lot. Which leads me to my next thing. We brought up the idea about the back nine being sold. We've been hearing that for years, and I've been prepared to fight that first. This was kind of a surprise. So I feel like we're being kept in the dark, and I'd like to know what the big picture really is. Do they plan on selling the back 9, developing this short plat here, and then just bailing and taking the money and running? I don't know, but I think we deserve the right to know. The number one thing in the vision statement for Bothell is that it celebrates and respects its picturesque setting by achieving harmony between the built and natural environments. Rezoning part of the Wayne Golf Course is in direct conflict with this vision. Therefore, the rezoning should be rejected. Thank you.
I do just want to make one comment to that. You had commented about deserving the right to know, and absolutely I want to reiterate, this is a totally open and transparent process. Most cases, you know what we know. I mean, we're seeing the same information. You get our packets just right out there. We're looking at the same packets. In a lot of cases, as I can tell from the testimony, you know more than some of us know. So it's very educational being on this side too. But I do want to reiterate, we're looking at the exact same thing as everyone out there. It's on the city's website. It's all right there.
Next is Trevor Albertson, followed by Tom Cobb, and then Tamara Cobb.
Yeah, Trevor Albertson. I live across the street from the Wayne Golf Course in the River Park townhomes off of Riverbend Drive. And I guess I would kind of mirror a lot of the same concerns that the people that live in the area have spoken about. One thing, the schools, just as an example, for this area, they're all up on top of Simons Road. So this morning, to drive from my neighborhood to the Safeway took me 30 minutes, which is down in Juanita. 30 minutes. So imagine trying to get your kids to school, going all the way up to the top of Simons Road, with more development and without doing the traffic studies. Like Sarah in our neighborhood earlier, she mentioned, doing the traffic study before. I just really think that the traffic in this area needs to be addressed before you allow any further development. So, thank you.
Tom Cobb. I reside at 9623 Riverbend, and most of my commentary is an add-on to Tim's. Tim, it would be hard to emphasize better than him because he was so passionate about what he said, but what we've heard so far tonight, we know we have, there's a gap between what people believe the conditions of the contract are. David has indicated the city planner says, or the city lawyer says that they have a free right of development, and other people have raised issues to say maybe not so. I cannot read your name. I think it's David. You had made an observation that was identical to my own, is that how could you say the view corridor is being maintained with any development fronting that whole thing? So I had that same thought there. So I think there is some controversy as to whether or not under the literal letter of the contract, what is or isn't allowed. But I think if you move to the intent of the contract, to me, it's crystal clear what the intent is. And everybody's raised those points. I don't need to reiterate those. The intent was clearly the Richards family got compensated to make that land available as Tim put it, a precious asset in perpetuity, available in perpetuity. Because of what was just raised in terms of what's the true viability of the golf course beyond this development, the plan seems either very ill-conceived or, I don't want to sound harsh, but possibly disingenuous in terms of what the intent is there. It's certainly the issues raised by things that can't seem to make sense. On a good day, that golf course, when they have their attendance high, the parking lot's got to have 70 people in there. I believe the plan says there's parking for 70, including all the residents. So where do the golfers go? The 4 acres goes down to within 200 feet of the water. That would take out the second hole green. It would encroach on the 9th hole green and wipe out the 18th hole. They make mention of an executive course, so then you have to completely recraft the course. If the back nine's up for sale, that's gone too. So it really makes you question whether the golf course is at all in play as an end game. If it isn't in play as an end game, then what's the access? The access is what? Through the driveways of the 76 condos that are there for the public? So from an intent standpoint, what the citizens of Bothell were supposed to get versus what they would end up with if there was an enabling of their request, and I think Tim used the perfect word, it would be an enabling of that request. Nothing compels us to do that under the agreement. We can leave it as it is, which would significantly, basically either mitigate the viability of any development or wipe it out completely. We don't have to help them along with that, okay? So then the question goes, if that was the intent of the original agreement, what is the intentions of the city planners? Well, their intentions, as I read them, if I go to the city's website and I go down on the trail and I read their signboards about how committed they are to open spaces, and I look at the initiatives they put on ballots, they're telling me they care about open space, okay? Well, if you can't close a deal to consolidate Blythe Park, the back nine, and the space that you've already paid to lock off for the citizens of the city. If you can't close that deal, that tells me where your intent is. It's just clear on its face. That's what we should be doing is working something to retain that asset for the city. We've already paid for it. What kind of salt in the wound would that be to the community to say, yeah, we enriched the Richards once, but we're going to let them enrich themselves again by upping a zoning when we don't have to. So, anyways, those are my thoughts.
Tamara Cobb, followed by James McNeil.
Hi, I'm Tamara Cobb, related to Tom Cobb, 9623 Riverbend Drive. And most of the concerns that I have been addressed already, the concerns of traffic in that region and the lack of that view corridor. I'd like to just stress that the importance of the health benefits that parks and open spaces and recreation provide to a community. There's the economic benefits, it maintains happy citizens, it draws people to the area, and it keeps the residents here who already live here. It'll keep us in the area. So there are massive health benefits of, being able to walk along the trail and see the golf course and the green space and the trees and the beauty that exists there. There's also a huge wildlife bird community in the area. I see them every day as I look out on my deck and across to the golf course. And it concerns me that if this was rezoned and additional townhomes were built in this area, the impacts that would have on the birds and the health of the community just in general. That traffic, or the traffic that we've been talking about too, also creates a huge noise pollution. Adding to that would, I think drive some people over the edge, and I might be one of them. It's bad. And with the new developments that are going on just south of that area, I just think this is poorly timed. I mean, we don't even know what the impact of that one new development that's just going in is going to be yet. And we've already heard how bad it is already. So I just urge also that we, at least postpone the idea of rezoning this area for the time being until we really have a good understanding of what the impacts could be.
Next is James McNeil, followed by Val and John Kelly.
Hi, my name is James McNeil. I'm a resident. I live at 16314 Valhalla Drive. I was born and raised on Finn Hill, the north side of Finn Hill, which we all know is a part of Bothell and Kirkland. For the better part of 47 years, I've been in this area. Watched this area grow immensely over the past 47 years. I have very fond memories of Bothell. Growing up, playing sports in Bothell, Kirkland, riding dirt bikes in this area. swimming in the slough, actually, back when we used to all do that as kids, and actually playing golf and learning how to play golf at the Wayne Golf Course. This is close to home for me because my wife is a graduate of Bothell High, and her and I together, I taught her how to play golf at the Wayne Golf Course. We recently moved to the Valhalla community so we could be close to the parks, trails, all the different open spaces available in the area of Valhalla. We have twin 6-year-old boys, and they have actually been on the Wayne Golf Course. They haven't played yet, but they've been on the course and they have their own clubs. We are looking forward to enjoying that course and that public open space for many years to come. Some of the things that concern me recently, as being a new member of Valhalla, I started paying close attention to the city's technology, which is having these meetings available online for the community residents. Some of the things that I noticed in the last council meeting on December 9th was the comments made by the mayor, which were very encouraging. His comments were, we're going to look after and move this city forward based on what the people want of the city of Bothell. That's very encouraging, and I ask you guys all to take a look at that December 9th and support that, because as you can tell, this is a pretty big issue. There's a lot of people here, and I will tell you personally that I've only known about this issue for 2 weeks. The notification that went out was very limited to 300 people, and as a construction manager, I understand that most cities are 300 feet mailing, but it's important and important enough that this is a big deal, a very sensitive, critical issue for the city of Bothell, that all the city of Bothell should have their voices heard on this matter. I don't think just rezoning something to include a 522 corridor without thinking about traffic, as people have talked about, emergency, life safety, all those different things, I don't think as a construction manager, we as a city should be doing it until we look at it first. There's no benefit to the city to do this. If I'm wrong, let me know. But there is no benefit to rezoning this. The landowners under our 9600 can develop that property. They can build a clubhouse, build a restaurant, make it really nice for the citizens of Bothell. And I guarantee more people would go in there if it was nicer. But building 76 townhomes that have no benefit whatsoever to any of the other public residents of Bothell doesn't make sense to me, or, as I'm hearing, to many people in this room. After hearing all the comments about the conservation easement and reading it myself and understanding intents, being in the construction industry and understanding being on the development side, I read that conservation easement very carefully, several times. And what I take from it is, when it was set up, conservation easements were newer. There's all kinds of track records on how these things were set up. But my understanding in reading that is the intent was to build a nicer clubhouse and parking for the golf course. It makes no sense whatsoever to not follow what we set up originally. For language, I think the council, the planning, should all sit down and talk to these owners. What can we do to make this good for the public? It's a public place, period. There's talk about view corridors. What is it going to do? It doesn't affect all the citizens of Bothell, but it affects those citizens around that area. I heard about traffic. People are flowing up and down Juanita Way. I have a school bus that comes in our community every morning, 3 of them actually, come in, turn around, and have to get back into that traffic. I can tell you that the kids are late to school because of the traffic. We have classrooms that are oversized, that it's not enough teachers to cover. You can talk to the schools. A big issue is not the fact that this 76-unit townhome is the problem. The problem is all of the developments. Has anybody studied the traffic mitigation for all of them? Piper's Glen, the one that's just finishing up by the Four Squares Church, the Elite. It's not just one. It's all of them. And if we continue, again, I'm telling you this from a construction manager standpoint, if you continue to develop without finding what impact you have on the citizens, you're going to have this and more. So I ask you guys to seriously take a hard look at this, and before you make a decision, sit down and talk to the community, talk to the people, understand the traffic mitigation, understand the life safety issues, understand what you are in fact giving away for the public. That's all I ask you to do. Think about it, at least have some more talks on it. Thank you.
Alan John Kelly, followed by Bruce Richards and Ken Bellamy.
My husband apparently is going to let me speak for both of us. This is a bit like Old Homewick. I live in Valhalla. I've lived there for 22 years with my husband. And I'm gratified to see so many of my neighbors here and to hear people from Riverside, that community, being here as well. Most of you have spoken very well and at length about traffic, health, and all of these things are, you've been very, very well versed on. And thank you, Jesse and James, for getting the word out and getting all of us here. I want to speak mainly to the fact that this is, most of this proposed rezoning area lies within the floodway and floodplain of the Sammamish Slough, as well as the proposed development encroaches on that 200-foot shoreline of the state. And secondly, that this is all being built except for the clubhouse remodel and parking where it exists. It lies on poorly drained soils, and the final thing is that this lower area below 40 feet is in an area that's been mapped by King County and by the City of Bothell as liquefaction area during periods of earthquake. And that's it. I just want to keep it short because you guys have been to be here for a long time. Thank you.
Okay. So next on the list are Bruce Richards and Ken Bellamy, the proponents who already spoke. I didn't know if they wanted to speak again. Okay.
Again, my name is Ken Bellamy. I'm a resident of Kirkland. I'm working with the Richards family to get to further their objective of finding a way to maintain the golf course. I think you've heard them state accurately that it is no longer viable in its current configuration. And so to that degree, we share an objective with the rest of the folks in the room this evening. We've come up with a concept that we think has merit and accomplishes our objective. And I think a couple of points that I'd like to reiterate is that by definition, the clubhouse area is excluded from the legal description of that conservation easement and is not subject to its terms, other than the first right of refusal to purchase it. And secondly, there was an issue of tax deferral. I believe the law states that if the property is removed from that from the current use, the open space use, that the back taxes plus, I believe, penalty are then paid back. Just to clarify that point. And lastly, on traffic, life safety issues, those are appropriate concerns, which I think I heard mentioned earlier are properly addressed in the context of a specific permit application, which is not where we're at this point. This is strictly a land use issue. Thank you.
So next would be Cindy Fuller. And that's the last one I have signed in. So if there's anyone else who wants to speak, please do come up and sign in.
My name is Cindy Fuller, and I live at 9717 Riverbend Drive. I love meeting my neighbors. I have two main concerns about this proposal. I'm a bicyclist. And quite often, I will cut through the Wayne Golf Course parking lot to get to the Burke-Gilman Trail. With townhouses in the way, that's not going to be possible. It's also not going to be possible if more houses and townhouses are built on 96th Avenue or Waynita Drive because there's no place for the bikes to go. It is not safe to ride a bicycle on 96th Avenue these days. And if it's not safe for a bicyclist, think about somebody who might want to cross the street to get a hamburger at the clubhouse. I also worry about the potential for runoff, and there will be runoff in any construction project. And the runoff will adversely affect the fish. If the runoff adversely affects the fish, it will adversely affect the waterfowl that all of my neighbors and I enjoy watching, particularly in the winter. So I strongly urge you to think carefully about the ramifications of this project. Thank you.
Go ahead and speak. Give us your name.
My name is Bill Lear, and I also am a resident of Valhalla neighborhood for 22 years, like Val. And she brought up many of the same points that I'd like to point out. You're building a development, what I call it a California-style condominium complex there on an area that's a floodplain. And is that the interest of the best interest of Bothell? It's the Planning Commission. You're under no obligation to help out the golf club owners to make a profit. They might be a very good idea to have a strip mall there for them to maximize their profits. That's not in the best interest of Bothell. Your obligation is to do what's in the best interest of Bothell, and that is to maintain the existing regulations. I mean, it's been brought up several times. I think if you build those development there, not only is it risky in terms of the environment, but it also is going to block access to the area where the golf course is. It makes it much less viable as a practical golf course. So it may be profitable to them, but it's not in the best interest of Bothell. Thank you.
I believe that's it, unless there's somebody else who wants to speak.
Okay. Well, again, thank you for all the testimony. We definitely hear you. Everyone on here is all. We drive these roads. We're all Bothell residents too. We're on both sides there. So, I just want to remind everybody of that. Procedurally, Dave, then how do we proceed?
Well, if the commission wants to enter into any deliberations now on this issue, this would be the time to do that, or to make a determination to just continue it. Also, based on the testimony you've had, any direction you'd like to give staff in terms of additional analysis or clarification of any of these issues. I've already made a number of notes of things that I'm like to come back to you with, and a few that I could address now if you'd like.
Pat, do you have a...
Yeah. Well, first off, I'd like to at least make sure we haven't had this kind of a turnout in a long time. So seeing that, and we've heard some notices where it was short notice, so at the very minimum, we should continue the public hearing and see if there's any other people out there that might want to have things. And I have a kind of a list here, and you guys might touch on some of the ideas that you have that I'd like to have staff bring back to us the next time. Some of the kind of the key points that I've heard is, I have four of them. One is there's a floodplain map out there, so let's get a floodplain map up there and see what's going on, what are we talking about, what kind of development can be done there with the floodplain map. Go to Sherman in the traffic, because he's looked at this, and if he could at least give us a preliminary. I know this is a neighborhood collector. It's not an arterial, but I think he looked at this corridor. I think this is one of the corridors he's looking at. So I think of the traffic, we might want to have him come back with that. The access to the whatever development here, looks like there's some existing right-of-ways there that they're using for parking or anything. So if there was a development there. If we have existing right-of-ways, we can make sure there's access from the trail to this open space, if you could bring that back to us. And then on the agreement, it might be one of the first agreements. I don't know how long King County's been doing some of these open space agreements. I've been part of some of them, but there's a person at King County, that could give us their opinion, I'm sure. They have an open space department. If they can just, if the intent of it, if just at least we could give them the call and find out what that was. And I sure would like to see a memorandum in writing from our city attorney on his opinion of it before we move forward. So if we can get these questions answered before we even, we decide to what we'd want to have, I think it would take a lot of the angst out of it, and that's just my thoughts right from here.
I'd like to add one more. Actually, I had all four of those. I had those four, and I had one more.
Okay, good.
I would like to find out if the golf club has been receiving favorable tax implications on the 4.1 acres as well. If they have, then that would, from my perspective, that would imply that view easement was for the entire property. So I'd really like to take a look and see what that specifically says.
Eric?
I agree, first of all, that there's really no way to make a decision on this tonight. I think we do need to gather that additional information, so I would support the continuance of this particular item. Couple questions, Dave, or a couple things to add, I guess, to the other commissioners' comments. Specific to the conservation agreement, my comment, I guess, it may be in a little bit more detail, is that first line of Section 7 of that agreement about the clubhouse, I think needs some careful attention. I think it appears to be obviously an item of contention. I think the city attorney needs to, as part of his memo, needs to weigh in on whether or not the fact that it says that it was for renovation or replacement of a clubhouse and parking lot, if that means that that's the only thing that was allowed there, or if that's just an example. And I think the city attorney should be able to weigh in on that. Secondly, I think the tax, particularly considering the proponents' discussion about the tax break issue, I think we really need to dive into that and have an opinion or have a summary of that issue. That's it for me for now. Thank you.
I've got a couple questions, and thanks to everybody for showing up. This is by far the most people we've ever had, and it really shows a lot about Bothell citizens' involvement and how much they care about the city. So, I guess a couple questions I would have to look into as well before moving forward would be to figure out if there are road improvements that would need to be done with this increased capacity in that area, and who would be charged for that. Would it be the golf club owner, or would it be the city of Bothell's citizens? And another one is just the impact of the impervious cover. I know currently, I guess, city of Bothell's under Washington state law. It was passed in 2005, but how that increased density would affect runoff in that area. And I don't know if that could be done at this point in time.
We can certainly bring back an analysis of that.
Yeah, I agree with the other commissioners' comments. I think it's difficult within the time frame of the comprehensive plan amendments to tackle an issue like this in a 2-week period. I mean, there's so many parts to it, and we learned so many new things today, and I thank everyone again for coming and sharing testimony, because it helped illuminate a few other items which we weren't currently aware. But yeah, I think we'd like to revisit again in February, move it to that date. I'd be in favor of that.
I had similar comments. Understanding the traffic implications more, I mean, that's a big deal, especially because there are other developments happening, just south of there. And so even looking at this in just isolation may not do it justice. We need to look at this with full knowledge of all the other developments that are happening in the area, because it can really add up there. Certainly the legal issues, the testimony brought up very specific legal things. Just having the city attorney speak to those specifically, we just need to make sure that there are these contracts in place. There are contracts with the city, with the county, and just making sure that those are very well understood, and that the concerns that have been brought up are understood, explained, and that we have something very clear from the city attorney, so that we can understand. Because obviously I'm not a lawyer, so I can't really evaluate between two opinions there. Well, so with that, I guess we'll take a motion.
Yes.
So this one continue in February?
February 25th is the next open date on the calendar, and there really weren't any other dates between now and then that were that didn't look pretty full already to us. So, and then after the February 25th would be the first week in March. So either of those would be possibilities for continuation of this discussion.
So, will you be ready for the 25th, David?
February 25th? Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so. So
there's a lot. So.
Yeah, no, exactly. At this time, I'd like to move that we continue the public hearing for the Juanita Golf Course rezone to February 25th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Let the record show the motion passes.
Okay. So the next item up.
So,
I don't know if you want to take a brief break while the room empties out.
Procedurally, how do I?
Just do we can do a 5-minute recess.
Okay, we'll take a 5-minute recess. Thank you.
Yes. Oh, excuse me. I just want to make.
All right, we are back from our recess. Continuing discussion of the public hearing on the 2015 periodic plan and code update.
Chair, at this time, I'm going to recuse myself because this is one of my property owner's requests, or the only one that I have. So.
Yes. Should we make a statement for the record there?
I think I just did.
Okay, perfect. I don't know if we need your name. That was Pat.
So, and before we jump into the Easton Avenue, I will enter one more exhibit that I received from Dr. Tadlock on the Wayne Golf Course proposal. So that would be Exhibit 26, and I'll be scanning all these and getting them to you in the next packet, if not sooner. So, moving forward, the Easton Avenue rezone was requested by Patrick and Jennifer Gastineau. It would apply to 14 parcels flanking Easton Avenue, 2 of which front on and are addressed on East Riverside Drive. The rezone would be from R5400D SSHO and R9600 SSHO to the proposal is to rezone to R5400A, and that's the proposal was Exhibit WS8 in the November 19th packet. So just to explain all those numbers and letters a little bit, the north part of Easton Avenue is zoned R5400D SSHO. R5400D is 1 unit per 5,400 square feet of buildable area, and the D signifies detached housing. So the development in R5400D does require division into separate lots of a minimum area of 5,400 square feet. The SSHO is the specialized senior housing overlay that exists for the broader area beyond Eason, and Eason Avenue is surrounded by specialized senior housing complexes. The south end of Eason Avenue, up the hill from East Riverside Drive, is zoned R9600 with the SSHO overlay. That's a minimum lot size of 9,600 square feet of buildable area. The SSHO overlay was kind of put over this area as a blanket, even though there is a provision that says that properties on Eason Avenue cannot take specialized senior housing developments cannot take access from Eason Avenue. So technically, a specialized senior housing, one of these surrounding specialized senior housing projects could theoretically purchase one of the Eason Avenue lots and expand into it as long as they didn't take access from it. Then before I get briefly into the staff recommendation, at a minimum, the applicants requested that the split zone parcel in the teal outline here be made, if Planning Commission doesn't approve their rezone proposal or the staff's recommendation, to at least make that split zone parcel all R5400D SSHO. Staff recommends rezoning the area to R5400D. We agree with removing the SSHO overlay since the provisions really don't make sense for this area. And the reason for recommending R5400D instead of R5400A is that the sub-area plan has several provisions calling for preserving the detached single-family character of the neighborhood of Eason Avenue. So even though I understand that the R5400A throughout the city, much of the R5400A zoning is being developed as detached housing. A lot of the detached condominium developments that we're seeing are zoned R5400A. It doesn't preclude, obviously allows attached housing, townhouse type development. So if the Commission did want to go with R5400A, I think it is necessary to rework some of the provisions in the sub-area plan that talk about preserving Eason Avenue for detached single-family housing, because that zoning would not be consistent with that. It might very well turn out to be detached development, but it wouldn't necessarily preserve it. The reason for R5400A is that it provides more flexibility. You don't have to create a separate lot. You don't have to meet the lot circle requirements. The setback issues are not as confining. There really are limited opportunities for infill development here, as I pointed out in the staff report, but I'll just quickly touch on them. This large property outlined in teal could theoretically be expanded, divided by taking that lot boundary and then expanding a bit into the backyard to create a 80-foot wide area here. So it could be developed as a R9600 lot that way, or if it was made all R5400D, this parcel itself could be developed as a separate dwelling unit. This property in the northeast corner is a historic register property. It's also a bed and breakfast, taking advantage of the provisions that allow bed and breakfasts in single-family zones for historic properties. It's certainly large enough to subdivide, but they would have to go through the process of going through the landmark board to get a certificate of appropriateness or a demolition permit. So that's seen would seem highly unlikely. There, at R5400D, there may be the possibility of creating like a carriage house type unit in the back, the south east corner here, over the parking. So there's perhaps a reasonable opportunity for a single unit on that parcel. There's another historic register property at the south west corner here, 17505, and the owner of that property was here, was signed up to testify, and left an exhibit. So that would be Exhibit 27 from Sherry Miller. Is that right? I'll have to refer to my, but that her parcel is actually large enough, if it was R5400, either A or D, to build a second unit on the back side, assuming that they could get an access easement through the very narrow space alongside the house. And then finally, the property here in the southeast is large enough to be subdivided, well, arguably large enough to be subdivided as a R9600 parcel. There are some wetlands just to the east here, and the buffers may take out enough of that property to prevent it being subdivided. Plus, just the configuration makes it difficult to create an R9600 lot, given both the location of the previous house here and certainly the location of the brand new house that the Gastineaus have built here. But theoretically, with R5400 A or D zoning, another unit could be done. Well, with either another unit could be created, a lot could be created here on the north side of that property. With R5400A, theoretically, the house could be turned into a duplex, and then another unit could be added. So that's all in the analysis. But it's really the comprehensive plan provisions that caused us to recommend the R5400D. We think it is appropriate to go with a smaller lot size because a number of the lots there are already non-conforming. They're less than 9,600 square feet. So, and the ones that have new developments are just barely 9,600, but they're brand new developments. So we don't see those being redeveloped any near future. So that's the extent of my presentation. Are there any questions from Commission?
Eric. Thank you, Commissioner Stahl. A couple things, a couple clarifications. First of all, you mentioned that the SSHO access is precluded from Easton Avenue. Why is that?
I think it was part of those same provisions in the comp plan that about preserving the single-family detached character of the street. Easton has been or had been discussed as potentially a small historic district. There's been enough change in it since those discussions took place that I think it's unlikely now, but there still are a number of the older traditional homes there.
You mentioned that the staff was recommending the R5400D instead of the A because it preserved the detached single-family character of the neighborhood. I live not too far from this location. I drive that stretch of road for quite a while. I've never characterized that as single-family in character. I mean, as you drive along there, you've got businesses on one side. On the north side, it seems like for the most part. And on the south side, at least from appearance, it appears to be multifamily. There's senior citizen homes. There's an apartment complex along there. So I guess I'd like to understand a little bit better why staff feels like that D is a better compatible use with the surroundings than A is. And you don't have to answer that now, but I guess I'd like to see a little bit of expansion on that discussion.
Well, I just clarify that I'm not talking about the larger area, but Easton Avenue itself
Just Easton
is
Avenue?
identified as a a little enclave of detached single family within that SSHO development.
Okay.
I did actually forget. So there's a photo looking north from the top of the hill, the end of Easton Avenue, towards East Riverside here, and a couple of other photos here looking back up north. And so this is the new construction. That is it's built as a single-family home, but it's an adult family home, which is an allowed use in single-family zones. So there's a number of adult family homes on the street. I believe at least three. Three. Okay. And then on the photo on the right, kind of shows that transition from the SSHO development on the west, on the right hand side of that picture, and the Easton Avenue single-family development. And this is the third historic registered property on that property, and one that the Gastineaus actually relocated and put on a stable foundation.
So Easton Avenue is to the left of that house in that picture?
Yes.
Okay.
It's actually there's one. They created one lot, and so there's a new house on the corner, and then Easton Avenue.
Okay. And then, as far as the removal of the SSHO overlay, or that zone, I'm assuming that the way that the neighboring properties were developed at a higher density, more as a multifamily, was because of that overlay. Is that
absolutely?
Is that correct? So what is the density calculation on how? So technically, in a 9,600 square foot zone with an SSHO overlay, you could end up with a larger building like that, a little more multifamily in nature.
Right, and there are densities of about 50 units per acre.
Even in a 9,600 square foot zone, you have that.
That overlay creates the opportunity to do that kind of density. Okay. And I'd say that the intent of doing the SSHO overlay has been met, and it's been even more successful, I think, than the planners at the time thought it would be. So I don't think removing it from this small area is really compromising the intent.
Okay, because I have a concern about. I think it's a wonderful thing that the city of Bothell does of having this area that's more senior citizen oriented, and I guess I have a concern about changing that. So if it can be demonstrated like I can see you're doing there, that it's very highly unlikely that any of these properties would be developed as that anyways. I could see that, but I do have that concern about taking away opportunities for senior housing. That's all I had. Thanks.
So I will confirm that Exhibit 27 is from Sherry Miller of 17505 Easton Avenue.
Any other questions from the commission?
I wish the individual that gave you that exhibit was here to kind of give us an idea as to what her feelings are in this. Is it possible for you to read? Is it short enough that you can just read it to us so we can kind of get an idea as to what her feelings are?
It's 2 pages. I can certainly scan it and get it to you in the near future.
Okay.
If you'd like, I can read it.
Do you have an idea as to kind of the Reader's Digest version as to what her feelings are? Or
I haven't even had a chance to look at it myself.
Okay.
I did have a conversation with her.
Maybe you just kind of relate to us what how the conversation went.
So she was concerned about the character. She owns one of the historic register properties, the one at the upper end on the south west corner of the area. We did talk about the fact that the zoning to R5400 A or D would enable her to add a unit on the back of her lot, and she said that she had no interest in that or no intention of doing that, but she understood that, and that it might, if and when she sells, it might be improve the value of the property. But at the time, she mostly just had a lot of questions. I didn't really get a sense of whether she was in favor or opposed.
Has there been any feedback or input from any of the other surrounding property owners at all, to your knowledge, or
No.
or do we have any in the audience now, by any chance?
That was the only sign-in for Easton Avenue. And before we would open it up, Jennifer Gastineau is here to present from the applicants or the proponents' point of view. So if there aren't any other questions for me, I'll turn it over to
David.
Oh.
Yeah. So after reading this and preparing for the meeting, I was surprised to know that there are 3 historical homes on the street. I mean, there's probably not even 20 historical properties in all of the city, right? So that's a pretty significant amount. That maybe is beside the point in this conversation. And maybe actually this rezoning would actually help it. It sounds like, to me, it would help maybe retain the character better. Or would you think that a 9600 would help retain the character better of a street that, as Eric mentioned, though, when you drive by it, it doesn't feel very residential in nature, but as you drive up it, maybe it does a little bit more. Would you feel that it would, upzoning it to get to 5400, potentially, how does that change the feel of a street? And that might be kind of a long question, or maybe not a yes or no answer. But
I think that upzoning to 5400D would preserve at least detached single family, and the opportunities that it would create for infill development that aren't there under our 9600 are pretty limited. And one of the opportunities might actually help someone, make the make the investment in the historic register property. Actually, there are 2 historic register properties that could add a unit that would potentially help maintain those. What you see on the street is the older homes that remain that aren't register homes. There hasn't been a lot of investment on the street. I would say in recent years, and I don't know that either our 5400D or our 9600 would really have a significant impact on that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so can we hear from? Yes.
Can we put the map back up? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Hello, I'm Jennifer Gastineau. I live at 17611 Easton Avenue. Our personal residence is the one outlined in teal, and we have lived on that property for 25 years. We own 5 properties in this neighborhood. So we originally owned the historic house that you saw on the right-hand side of the picture, the little green and purple house, and that sat on that lot. And we requested the city rezone our property and the property across the street, which was the Evans property, to 5400, so that we could create the opportunity to subdivide our land, create a lot to move that little historic house to, and put it on a new foundation to preserve it. And then we built ourselves a new house where we have 4 kids on our property. By rezoning the Evans property to 5400, it allowed them to use their historic house as a bed and breakfast, which wasn't allowed under the 9600 zone. So in both those cases, upzoning to 5400 actually protected historic homes. We also run an adult family home business. I'm a nurse. We take care of seniors. We have 3 homes that we have built on the street that are single-family residences that are licensed as adult family homes. They each house 6 seniors. There's very little traffic associated with adult family homes because the people don't drive. So I think we make pretty good neighbors. We don't park any cars on the street at all. We provide all off-site parking. Our request is mostly just to clean up some sloppy, what seems like sloppy zoning in the area. After we built our personal residence, we bought the property next door and did a BLA, and so now our property spans 2 different zones that we'd like to clean up. Most of the houses on the street are on properties far smaller than 9,600, so it doesn't make sense that it's zone 9,600. We would like to actually preserve the SSHO overlay because I think there is potential at some point that some of those property owners could sell their property to the senior facilities that surround Easton Avenue. And I think because those property owners were encumbered by senior housing on all sides, they deserve the opportunity to benefit from that if that were ever a possibility. Along this side is a massive Riverside East senior housing facility that has 50 units per acre. Along the whole back is Foundation House, which is a giant senior housing facility. And along the far right side is Vineyard Park, which is also massive. So the whole entire neighborhood is surrounded by senior housing, which actually we fought it pretty vigorously, and they make good neighbors. You know, they're quiet. There's very little traffic associated with those facilities. So I could see at some point, perhaps even though Sherry isn't in agreement with this, I could see Sherry selling her property to either Riverside East or Foundation House and having that land incorporated into maybe another building associated with their housing, and I can't see any reason why we would want to preclude her from doing that. The other properties on our street that are not historic, were built much later, and so I don't think any of those properties will ever be preserved as historic housing. It's possible they might get torn down at some point and redeveloped as additional single-family homes. We're only asking for attached versus detached because it gives you a little bit more flexibility in what might be built. It's not that important, though, in our proposal. Any questions?
In your proposal, you did not ask for the continuation of the senior housing overlay, is that correct?
We did want it to continue.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Staff suggested that it be removed, but we did not want it removed.
Okay. And you're okay with their recommendation of 5400D?
We are.
Okay, thank you.
Just a follow-up question for David. You probably mentioned it, but what was the main reason for removing the senior housing overlay from that street?
Well, my understanding of the original proposal was to go 5400A without the overlay, but the main reason was that it seemed inconsistent with, for the same reason we didn't feel that our 5400A was appropriate. It seemed inconsistent to have several mentions of preserving the detached single-family character of Easton Avenue, and then also give it a specialized senior housing overlay that, on the one hand, is precluded from taking access from it, but could back up onto Easton Avenue. So if we're really serious about trying to preserve this as an enclave of detached single family, it seems appropriate to remove that overlay. But it would be worth hearing from others along the street whether they see that as a potential benefit down the road.
I have one more thing to add. I can say that we have talked to a number of the neighbors. The house on the corner, the 17617, is in support of our proposal. The Webb property, which is the 17511, is in support. I did not talk to the people at 17507, but the Mulkeys at 17508 are in support. The only person I talked to who is not is the house at 17520. It's a little yellow house, and she didn't want to see any changes to the neighborhood.
Eric, if the SSHO was removed from this, would that create any non-conforming uses? Dave?
I'm sorry. I thought you were following up with that further.
If the overlay, the senior housing overlay was removed, would that create any incompatible uses on Easton Avenue? Or, non-conforming uses?
No. There are no... And that was actually one question that came up. I did get a couple of calls from other neighbors besides Sherry Miller, and there was some confusion about adult family homes, that those were specialized senior housing, but they are not. So those are allowed in any single-family zone.
Okay,
so.
Thank you.
So I was distracted. I was trying to skim through Ms. Miller's letter. So she still does have some concerns about parking, whether the street has enough utility services for additional homes, EMT, fire and police access. Those are certainly things that we can look into and come back to you about.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the commission? And then procedurally, Dave, can we take public testimony now for?
Yes.
Great. So just if you would like to comment on this topic, please just come to the podium, state your name, whether you're a resident of Bothell. We had a good demonstration of this process in the first hour, so we'll just repeat the exercise.
I'm Ann Agard at 16524 104th Northeast. I, like Eric, drive along this area quite frequently, and I'll speak to one of the other issues. But I'm going to just say one thing that is a little bit off of the main subject of the 5400, but I want to emphasize to the Planning Commission the wonderful amenity the bed and breakfast is to the city of Bothell. And I know this is not going to impact it, but we have had a number of family celebrations. Our relatives stay at the bed and breakfast. Sean and Beth are the most wonderful bed and breakfast host and hostess. They have a beautiful yard. We have had family dinners there. We have had 50th anniversary celebrations. And to my knowledge, there is no other such amenity in the city of Bothell that offers this. You can actually host, I think, about 20 people in the kind of the middle piece of the that has joined the two houses together. So you can fit in a large group of people for dining and such. And it is really wonderful. So it is something that we want to encourage in the city and not do anything, which I don't think this will, anything to discourage it. So, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other testimony on this topic? Please just come to the podium, state your name, whether you're a resident.
My name is Mike Challenger. I live at the Thrashers Corner area, so I have no axe to grind in this one. I support Ann's comments on bed and breakfast. I would, even as a non-resident of the area, I would support this even if it's only for clarification of zoning issues. It makes sense to me. Thank you.
Anybody else to comment on this topic? Okay. And then procedurally, Dave, what's our next step on this?
Same options. You can make a recommendation. If you're ready, you can continue again to February 25th, along with the Wayne Golf Course issue. Or you could defer this for beyond this plan and code update.
Eric, did you?
I want to just, if I could, make a recommendation that we also continue this to the next one. I'd like to get a little bit more information, I think, about the proponent or the applicant would like to keep the SSHO overlay, and I see the city wants to remove it. I'm not, I guess, not totally sold on which way that ought to go. I kind of feel like it does have a benefit. So I'd like to, I guess, if there could be more analysis or a little bit more information on that, I would feel more comfortable making a decision once we had that information. That's my opinion.
And then, I mean, are you? I guess could we split this into two issues? Then there's one issue of just going with the staff recommendation straight up. And then there's a second issue on top of that about what do we do about the SSHO overlay. If that's something, I'm all for making forward progress. If we'd like to go ahead with the 5400D and take the staff recommendation, David, procedurally, can we do that and then keep an open issue for the SSH overlay, or do we need to keep it all bundled as one thing?
Well, you can certainly, I think that direction, you can make that a clear direction, but if there are any open issues, we should probably bring the whole thing back for final recommendation.
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Clark. It's boxed in, surrounded by senior communities, so I think extending the SSHO makes sense on one hand, but it's also a street with single-family dwellings, so just a little bit more information and bring it back next time in February.
I would agree with that.
Okay. Yeah, I like the general direction. I guess for me the question is just, do we go with the staff recommendation straight up, or do we do the staff recommendation plus the SSHO? So then I guess at this point, can I get a motion?
Do we need to decide what date this would be?
What would this be?
We're going to keep all the sub-area
February
pieces
25th?
together, so it would be
Okay.
February 25th.
I guess I'd make a motion to extend this this particular proposal to the February 25th, 2015 public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And the record show the motion passes.
So if Commissioner Gastineau is listening in from the lobby, he can rejoin us.
Oh, you're ahead of me. Already.
So are we ready to move on?
Yes, please.
The next proposed rezone is what we're calling the South Riverside rezone. Rob Furman made the request the day of the last hearing to rezone his two parcels outlined in the yellow dashed line from R9600 to R7200. The reasons given were to capture development potential that was lost with the establishment of critical area buffers and changes to the planned unit development rules, which some of the surrounding developments were able to take advantage of. And further justified that as saying that this rezone would essentially match the character and the unit yields of those more recent developments in the area. Staff recommended that Planning Commission consider also extending that, since that was the justification, those surrounding developments, that perhaps it made sense to at least look at whether it made sense to extend this rezone to that entire R9600 area from the SSHO overlay on the west to I-405 on the east. And so that is our recommendation. We have heard some from some of the neighbors, both pro and con. Well, actually, I'm not sure if all of these are neighbors, but so I would like to introduce tonight Exhibit WS13, an email from Paul Johnston, who I believe is a neighbor, and Exhibit WS15, a letter from Eve and Scott Livingstone, who do live in this zone. An Exhibit WS19, an email from Mary Norton, who owns a home in this zone and who's, I think, as a child, one of her children's family lives there. And Exhibit WS20 from Stacy Pistole, an email, and it wasn't clear from her email if or he or she live in the zone, but indicated that they were in this area frequently, and that was in favor of this. So I believe we have one person who signed the sign-in sheet to speak, but before we go to that, I know the proponent is here, and before I just want to make a couple of notes on the capacity analysis I did. It's certainly not a straightforward area to do a capacity analysis on because it is full of streams, wetlands, steep slopes. Streams and wetlands are a little more straightforward as they have defined buffers once they're accurately delineated. I went with the mapping that we had in those cases. Steep slopes is more of an economic issue in a way, in that with a geotechnical report, with enough engineering, if you put enough money into it, you can build on most anywhere, but it's not economically viable to. So I did take a cue from the existing, more recent developments and reduced the buildable area based on the areas that were set aside by those developments. So I'd just like to point out 3 of those areas here on the map. On the west side of the development is an area that was developed under a planned unit development at a time when planned unit developments in City Bothell could reduce the minimum lot size. And they did that in part by setting aside a large tract of open area to the uphill side on the steep slopes of the property. But they reduced the lot sizes to some are under 6,600 square feet in an R9600 zone, which you cannot do today. So that's one. Then this development around 109th place is a more straightforward R9600 development, but there are wetlands to the east, at least there are mapped wetlands to the east that with current critical areas regulations would have taken out some developable area from the corner of that. So they were able to probably get a unit or two, a lot or two there that they wouldn't have been able to get under our current regulations. And then immediately adjacent to the proponent's property is a development with where they actually relocated a stream to the backyards of the houses on the east side. Something that I don't know about the relocation would certainly be looked at very carefully, more carefully nowadays, and there would be a buffer, a stream buffer around that that would have significantly reduced the number of homes built in that development. And the relocation actually impacts the proponent's property. The buffer now extends onto their property, or at least or further onto their property than it did before. So staff analysis was that that this area, the remaining property, underdeveloped properties in this area are characterized again by homes that haven't had a lot of investment in them recently. That we think there are some redevelopment opportunities, but I think the R9600 zoning is probably an impediment to that in terms of the limitations on the number of lots that could be built. So that the R7200 zoning would have under current rules would have to comply with the critical areas regulations, the buffers and setbacks. So the unit yield would be, in our estimations, similar to what these other recent developments were able to do without those restrictions. And the lot sizes at a minimum of 7,200 would be larger than many of the lots in this development to the west. They'd be smaller than the lots in these two cul-de-sacs closer by to the west. But again, the unit yield for the property would be similar, comparable to those. A reasonable alternative that Planning Commission could consider would be an intermediate step to R8400. There is R8400 zoning across East Riverside Drive along the river. So we think that is an option that would be open to Planning Commission, but we felt that the request was reasonable to go to R7200. So, any questions? Oh, I do have some images from the area too. So the proponent's driveway, one of the driveways is here in the upper left. The development that moved the stream into the backyards is here in the middle, and just to the west of that is a property that's for sale and has been for sale for some time. I don't know if you can see in this picture, but there are wetlands on that property. There's standing water there right now on the lower side, steep slopes on the upper side, so that's going to be a difficult one to develop. On the at the far east of the property, up against I-405, is this lot in the lower left, and then that planned unit development is here in the image on the lower right. So,
any questions?
Just, I just want to let people know, I have a piece of property along here. It's a brand new house, so I don't think there's any development potential, and I don't live in it, but I'm not going to recuse myself because it's not my personal residence, and I'm not requesting any rezone on this.
Thanks. Eric?
Thank you. Dave, you mentioned that the property that I believe it's called Riverside Glen or Sammamish River Crossing was a PUD, and that the lot reduction that they got then would not be allowed now. Did the PUD ordinance get changed where there was no reduction in lot size, or are you just saying it couldn't be reduced as much as it previously was?
My understanding is that there's very limited lot reduction now. I think it can only go down to 8,400, but is my understanding.
In a 9,600 square foot zone. So if this property was rezoned to R7200, is there a similar PUD option on that would allow a further reduction below 7,200?
It could. What it doesn't do, it doesn't allow you to increase the yield.
Right.
So
Right.
So you can do a small amount of clustering, but
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, at this time, can we take testimony from the proponents?
Yes.
Good evening. Paula Furman, 11203 East Riverside Drive, Bothell. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, David, thank you very much. The goal of the Growth Management Act is to create urban environments in urban spaces and protect the rural areas outside of the cities. Overarching goal. What is the highest and best use of the remaining underdeveloped property? Bothell is an urban environment. East Riverside Drive used to be, until recently, part of the downtown sub-area. In fact, it hasn't moved. It's still right next to downtown. It's an arterial. It has mass transit, public buses. It is an urban area. In fact, just going on, it stands to reason that land in this urban environment should have at least the same number of families living in it as would have occurred prior to the Growth Management Act. I mean, it shouldn't be less, since the goal of the Growth Management Act is actually to have urban areas and urban environments. Otherwise, the end result of the Act would have been to have created more sprawl versus creating the living environment that the GMA actually tried to create. As recognized by city staff in the very carefully prepared report, prior to the GMA, some of the lots in question would have been able to provide homes for approximately 26 families in Bothell. But at present zoning conditions, only about 16 families could live here, a decrease of about 10. Public school math, I can count. Which is, again, the antithesis of the overarching goal of the Growth Management Act. At 7,200, these lots would get closer to the number of families who could have lived there prior to the GMA, but it still does not reach the minimum threshold that existed prior to that law. Or reach the minimum best use, even more so, pre-GMA. One thing, I know you addressed the PUD. I don't think the PUD has been used in the city for 20 years because it is basically an unusable ordinance. Now, decreasing the number of families living here is not environmentally sound development. It's just pushing more and more development further out to the hills. Again, counter to the GMA. In fact, again, it creates sprawl. It would be bad management and bad stewardship of the remaining land to have zoning larger than 7,200 in this, what used to be the downtown sub-area of the city. As you see, actually, let me give you something. I have a handout. What you're getting is just an image of several houses built in this area. Wait for y'all to get it. Now, as you see from the photos of these houses along East Riverside Drive, the families who live in these homes on lots as small as 5,385 square feet live in beautiful homes. I wish my home were as nice as these. Without checking the tax information on the property, it is doubtful that anybody would know the size of the lot, especially since they have the feel and look of any other size lot. With the few remaining underdeveloped properties along East Riverside Drive, given the hillsides and things David was talking about, the setbacks and other things described in the city's report, building family homes on 7,200 square foot lots will still leave vast tracts of open space around them, giving the look and feel of much larger lots. In previous developments, these spaces, the hillsides and other things, were included in the lot size, which is no longer the case. 7,200 will also provide uniformity with how the majority of family homes have historically been built in the last 15 years along this small corridor. And going through all the development, there are more houses built on lots smaller than about 7,400 than were built on larger sizes than that. The city's recommendations are correct. The requested rezone would provide homes similar to those achieved in relatively recent redevelopments in the area while protecting environmentally critical areas through the current, more stringent regulations and approximating the character of those newer developments. We support the city's recommendation on this proposal. Do you have any questions?
I'd just like to interject that let's enter this as Exhibit 28.
And any questions from the commission?
I guess I have a quick question. So, how long has it been 9,600? Just as far as back as you can remember.
It was R4 zoning before. Yeah, so it's been, I don't know when it became that. We've been there for 18 years or thereabouts, 16, 18.
But the R4 is different than 9600. So it went 2005. It went to R 9600. So it's a different zoning. David,
it is different in the way it's applied. The R 9600 is roughly also 4 units per acre, but it all depends on how you measure that, whether it's measured on net buildable or gross area.
Right.
I have a question for Dave.
Yeah.
Real quick. Dave, how long ago was this area removed from the downtown sub area, and do you know why that was done?
Yeah, when we did the recent downtown plan, we changed the boundaries of the downtown sub area. We incorporated the campus into the downtown sub area, and basically went by a principle where we kept, for the most part, we kept any mixed-use zones and excluded single-purpose, single-family zones from the downtown sub-area, with the exception of Sunrise Valley View, which was in the middle of the downtown sub-area. So we established the green belt along the Sammamish River as the south boundary of the downtown sub-area.
So there really wasn't any intent to try to decrease the density. I mean, there was no possibility of that, or no desire to do that. It was mainly was it more administrative then, do you think?
Well, it was part of the whole public it was an early part of the public process. We took that to council and to establish the boundaries for the study. But we agree one of the reasons for the staff recommendation to go to 7,200 is that even though the area as it is now has a somewhat rural feel to it, it's not only within the growth management area, it's within walking distance of the downtown core. So,
okay. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any other public testimony on this topic? Please just come to the podium.
William Parcell, 11321. I'm the property owner that essentially it's 4 lots right now, but it butts right across here, right next door. I'd just like to concur with the city's recommendation. If you're going to take that area outlined in red and you're going to change it to R72 for 2, you ought to change it for everybody so that it applies the same. That seemed like a reasonable recommendation, and I just wanted to say I'm okay with the 7,200, and I'm okay with you doing it for the entire red area.
Thank you. Any other testimony, please?
I challenge it again. I drive Riverside Drive every day on my way to Redmond, and driving down it, you see a sort of a mishmash of development. It seemed to me this is an ideal case again for harmonizing not only the zoning but the look of Riverside Drive. It seems to me that there are opportunities for building more residences that will, of course, bring in a bigger tax base and more taxes to the city. And again, this is an urban area, no question about that. Although it sometimes looks rural, it is not. So I am in favor of the city's recommendation for this property. Thank you.
Thank you. And any others? Please just come, state your name.
This is deja vu all over again. My name's Claudia Elsmore, 17320 Riverside Place, and I live right here. And I've seen a lot of growth. Bought back in 1971 when this used to be the turkey farm, and I'd walk across and go and buy my own turkeys. And this was a dirt road. This was a little 2-lane rural road, so I've seen a lot of change in the city of Bothell. Some of the concerns I have, because I've just moved back from 6 years, and is the traffic on Riverside Drive. I leave at 6:30 in the morning, and I can sit there and wait to take a left turn to get to work in Redmond. On the way back, it is backed all the way up. It is backed up going into Bothell. I make sure I don't have to go to Bothell and I don't have to go to Woodinville. And going up on top of the hill, Norway Hill, or the other, I called it Old Brick Road over by Chassé, you just sit up there. And then you got getting on 405. I don't know if there's been any study on our traffic. It is you look at 520 or 405, and it's at a dead stop at 6:30 in the morning. And just like everybody else, including myself, I'll find any type of back road I can to get to work on time. So I'd like to make a very verbal concern about the traffic. Again, flooding. The recreation or the repositioning of this creek on the backside of these homes comes underneath this road and shoots right through here and comes out a big old giant pipe, about yay big, a culvert. And when it's raining and it's storming, water shoots out about, I'd say about 20 feet out into the river. It is a lot of debris, sand, dirt, all piled up against the home there. So if this indeed does have wetlands here, and I'm sure it does because my This was wetlands, and this is the Bothell Station now, which was all built on wetlands with pile driving for over a year for all of these condos that are in this area right here. There's still a little wetland here that has a culvert that runs underneath the other Bothell Station of condominiums and goes down here into the river. If there is indeed any wetlands, and I know there's a wetland, there's a pond and some type of big pond on your property, sir, and that comes down through here, that I'd like to have this investigated before we have any more big culverts running out and going down and into the river again. I guess the flooding is another big concern. Being over here, my backyard is pretty wet. I don't need a sprinkler system. It's just wet. I have a crawl space that I have to have a pump, because back when this property was being developed, and it was going through a PUD at the time, plan unit development, they decided that they could move this creek, but we also had University of Washington do a hydraulic, and all of this water that's coming off of this Norway Hill has an effect, and it comes down and comes underground. It always comes to the river, and it will come down. It's got some type of, I'm not any hydraulic person or engineer, but I don't know when the last study was, and I don't know if it was clear back in 1975 when all of this was taking place, but I would sure like to find out about the hydraulics and where that water is really going and who does it really affect. If we do take the recommendation and go to a 7T200 and start building more property here, this hillside, as you know, that's why this is a green space, is because of all this hillside. They couldn't build up there. It wasn't feasible. So my recommendation is, I hope, that the city does look at the concerns of some of the people that live in this area, not just drive it or have property that they rent out. And I love the flowers, by the way, on your property. Thank you for renting that out to them. And I know it's always a backup just to buy those flowers. But just some real concerns of us that live down in this area. And I just got this piece of paper like a week ago. And I don't know if any of my neighbors even know that this is like happening. So thank you very much.
Yeah,
Ann Agard, 16524 104th Northeast. We live up on Norway Hill, and there are two ways for us to get down to Bothell. One is to go down along 145th and come down 100th and Wayneeda Way. You just heard a room full of people talk about the traffic problem, about getting into Bothell that way. So we cannot go down that way and get into Bothell. We shop in Bothell. We go to church in Bothell. I swim out at the Y. I do this every day, 2 or 3 times a day. The other way I can get down into Bothell is to come down, and I don't know how to use, come down the hill, and then you come down this windy road and come down here to Riverside Drive. This is 108th. And again, cannot get into Bothell. It's impossible. Because sometimes the traffic is back clear up here to 108th. Quite often it's up to here. You cannot go over and go into Woodinville because you have exactly the same problem. It's blocked as you get down to the Woodinville corner and have to go that way. So we are stuck. And that means also that any kind of emergency vehicles cannot get through or get up the hill. So that's the first thing I would say. There is a very serious traffic problem. And although it's characterized in the staff report as a connector, it is not connecting, it is not functioning. And I think it is inappropriate at this kind of level that you're working on your comprehensive plan review. This was not to be a major rezone of the areas. You were to be doing very simply corrections for areas. And in particular, in this area, we're looking at a major rezone. So that's number one. The second thing is, coming down this road here, this is all totally steep and unbuildable here. It is wet. It is steep. There is no way you could get access off of there, either because of this road would be impossible or any other way. And it is slide prone. So it is wrong, in my opinion, to have a zone of 7,200 on land that cannot be built on at all. Because then it just says that you rezoned it incorrectly, but there's nothing that says that. So please, whatever you do, do not extend the 7,200 to steep, unbuildable slopes, which are here, which are in here, and which are over here. The property owner you just heard from. The third reason is because of the hill. This is the north side, but it is the north side of Norway Hill. In the winter, the sun never hits this area. When I come down here, just about here, it is like early this week, it is covered with frost. This is slick. The road is slick down here. This is all in dark all of the day, and so is this area in here. It is really a very difficult and not a real pleasant place to live in the winter because there's no sun. And these houses here, at the end of the day, still have frost on the roofs because no sun gets there. So while you can talk about this being close to the center of Bothell, it is, but it is not an area that should be developed at 7,200, and it is absolutely incorrect to characterize it as if it ever could be. It cannot be. So what about this request for the 7,200 by the Furman brothers, Apollo and his brother Robert? They don't live here, and they have not. They have a wonderful flower garden here, but it is not an appropriate zoning tool to upzone land because you've got critical areas on it. We have a critical areas ordinance. It makes compensation for when you have to develop the area, gives you buffers, it allows you to be buffer averaging. But when they bought the property, the critical areas were there just as they were here and just as they were here. On this particular piece of property, this whole bottom part was a wetland. And many years ago, before the critical areas ordinance that is part of our code now, in fact, there was an earlier wetlands ordinance. This property was owned by one of the planning commissioners, and he did a SEPA declaration on it. And when it was to be developed, the city attorney said that he was grandfathered in, and that the regulations regarding the wetland preservation would not apply to his property. So he built on it. But certainly under the regulations that were then, and certainly under the ones that are now, it could not be done this way. There was a significant wetland right in here on this property. So we're dealing with some historic issues that do not accurately reflect what was on the ground and what would be done today. Today, you would not build this number of houses here because you couldn't. So I ask you not to rezone the property, leave it at 9,600 as it has been for many, many years, and whatever you do, do not extend the 7,200 to these steep, unbuildable, wet areas. Thank you.
My name is Jeff Cook. I'm a Bothell resident since 1978. And can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Let's see if I can get this here to work. I currently live in, well, pardon me, I should probably start over. I'm a resident of Bothell, but just recently became Kenmore. And my property is approximately an acre where we live. Just to tell you a little background, it was 9,600 square feet since I moved in there over 35 years ago. It's changed to 5,400 square foot lots now, 52, something like that, right? All kinds of building going on around us. But we live in the same old shack, and we're okay with it. I didn't buy for the purpose of development, but having a good place and safe to live. And there's a lot of issues with growing area and having to cope with the traffic and such. But people need a chance to have a reasonable place to live. And I became associated with this property here in particular over 20 years ago from the man that bought it back in 1952. And he's hoped to develop this property. Now he's 84 and a half now, hoping to have enough money for retirement, you know, a secure retirement. And 7,200 square foot lots will just allow him to develop this 2 acres with what has to be reasonable setbacks. It's always going to be reasonable pertaining to what is deemed to be wetlands or steep, has been pointed out by the city planners, that this is a reasonable position to have 7,200 square foot lots. It's not a great deal of difference between the 9,600 and the 7,200. It's just assurance that whoever is going to invest in this development, that they'll get a reasonable amount of living space. So I want to concur with those that have said that this 7,200 is a reasonable position to have for rezoning from 9,600 to 72. Thank you.
Yeah, please just come to the podium.
Jennifer Gastineau, 17611 Easton Avenue. We actually own a home in this area right here that we use as an adult family home as well. And just a correction, the Furmans do occupy their property that they live on here. We walk past them all the time and see they live there. I'm very much in support of rezoning this entire area to 7,200. I'd be in support of rezoning the whole thing to 5,400. And the reason for that is this is an area where healthy people can live in a home and walk to downtown Bothell. And there's not that many places where that can happen. This is within a mile of the downtown revitalization that the city of Bothell is trying to do. And the city's investing a lot of money, and we need healthy young families living in this area. And when you have a 9,600 square foot lot, you're going to put $1 million home on that. And not very many working class American families can buy that home. If you create the opportunity for smaller lots, more homes, smaller homes, people can move in, occupy these areas. The traffic, I live on this street. The traffic at peak time, it's kind of hard. But I commute down this road every day. You go at a little different time. You don't go when Cedar Park Christian School gets out. You know, if you need to go to the store and you don't want to take your car, you walk, and it's close enough to do that. So it pushes people to be a little more creative. Maybe it pushes them to get in a bus or carpool. That's a good thing. That's not a reason why you shouldn't develop our downtown area. So I'm 100% in favor of this project, of the rezone. And also, you know, I think these areas, I don't know if they can be developed or not, but we don't have to debate that. That's what engineers and soil engineers and geologists are for. There's always a way to develop something. Maybe it costs a little more. Maybe water needs to go underground. You know, I think it's perfectly natural for water to flow off a hill and into a river. That's the way God intended it. So I don't think we have to worry about that too much. Anyway, just wanted to say I'm in support of this. Thank you.
Hey. Oh, watch out.
Hi, my name is Glenn Conley. I live at 17316 Riverside Place. My wife and I have lived there for 20 years on the river, right next door to Claudia, down the hill from Ann, down the road from the Furmans. So we don't have being there as 20-year residents, we don't have anywhere near the history of some of these folks. But I can tell you that we have seen a lot of change as well. And we use Riverside Drive to get to both Bothell and to Woodinville on a daily basis, sometimes more than once a day. And a lot of times we can't pick the times when we choose to go either direction. I could have held, I guess, maybe more appropriately, I agree with a lot of things that have been said on both sides of the issue here tonight. But I guess my comments really go more toward the congestion, the traffic, and what the long-range implications of not any one of these four issues that you're hearing about tonight, because we've already talked about Eason, and then we've talked about, now we're talking about the Furman request, and next you're going to hear about the proposal to create a light industrial zoning for another part of Riverside Drive with the idea that we'd put breweries, perhaps wineries, distilleries, et cetera, along that area. So I think we need to look at whatever we choose to do or whatever changes we choose to make to this area. We have to look at it in a holistic sense and in a larger context. If we start thinking about, I mean, the residential impacts, putting more houses, more families in the area will certainly have an impact on traffic, but I would wager that the long-term implications of what may become attractions further on down between 102nd and where we all live on Riverside Drive would have even a larger impact. If you take a look at Woodinville and the wineries, the attractions that they have there. If you look at what happens there on a given weekend, the parking, there needs to be accommodations for a lot of people coming from outside the area to Woodinville. If we start seeing the same kind of traffic on the weekends on Riverside Drive, then we're going to have horrible traffic on Saturday and Sunday, where today we have on Monday through Friday. Seniors do make great neighbors. We have a lot of senior housing in the area, but that also requires more trips on the part of the fire department and EMS, and we need to make sure that those services, those guys can get to those people when they need them. And right now, if a medical emergency happens at a rush hour, good luck. They're going to be seriously delayed. And with more traffic on the road, it's only going to get worse. So I would.
We'd just like to keep it to 3 minutes.
Sure.
If you can wrap up, thanks.
Okay. So just look at whatever you're planning on doing. I know you have to consider them one at a time, but you have to take the holistic approach to the area. Thank you.
We have coming up on our 10 o'clock. So, Dave, what do you want to do here?
Yeah, I don't know. I know, Dave, that we need to be on public record. I got a 10-minute warning.
Sorry. At this point, we could go ahead and hear the last issue. We could go ahead. You could choose to go ahead and continue all of this to February 25th. I see that the one person who had signed up to speak on the North Riverside rezone is no longer in the room. At least I don't. Oh, you are? Sorry. Oh, okay. I didn't see you on the list.
James had given us a 10 minutes, so I don't know about if he has a problem.
Oh, okay.
So,
I didn't.
so he just.
Anyway, we should wrap up quickly.
We have to be on public record.
Well, we have two things. One, we have to choose to extend this. This meeting ends at 10 o'clock, and we walk out the door if we don't have it extended. So someone will have to make a motion to move it beyond 10 o'clock. First of all, and or we wrap this thing up real quick.
I would be in favor of moving it beyond 10 o'clock if we agreed that this particular proposal right now, when we're finished discussing this, we would then, not address the other one, but address the next issue at the next public hearing.
Okay, but even if we do extend it past 10, I think, if I understand James' warning right, we have a hard stop at when James' tape runs out, right?
Yeah. Well, he just told us we had 10 minutes, whatever that means. Dave, do you know?
I don't. I would suggest extending it to 10:10, and then since the gentleman has waited patiently through all these others, if we can at least take his testimony on these.
I'll make a motion we extend till 10:10.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. All right. Well, then, can we take testimony from the individual who specifically signed up and has waited extremely patiently?
Yeah, I'll pass on my presentation, and there is no proponent. So.
Yeah, there's a proponent here for the brewery.
Well, that was a staff proposal, so technically it wasn't a private property owner request, but if there's anyone who wants to speak to that proposal,
we have somebody else to speak.
Are we finished speaking about this one?
We have one more person that wants to give.
I'll be very brief. Bill Moritz. I'm a resident of Bothell up on Norway Hill. I was concerned when I saw this proposal because it seems like I didn't realize that what you're doing now, these code amendments, the sort of the tweaking of the plan, as Ann mentioned, I thought, well, okay, you fix problems, but this is not a problem. And to cast the net as wide as you have, as the staff has recommended, I guess, seems to be at odds with what I thought was going to be going on here. And this proposal by itself, it would seem to be as a spot zone. And I agree with Ann in terms of the issues with respect to all these steep slopes and wetlands here. So maybe, include this property to the east, but I'm not sure what the point is of approving all this stuff, which is mostly developed. There's one lot here, true, but it seemed like this just exploded into something much bigger than I ever expected. That's all my comment. Thanks.
Thank you. And I just want to make sure, David, if we had people who had signed up specifically to speak from the public, that they have a chance? Or has everyone who signed up beforehand
all
had a chance to
those
speak?
that have signed up have either spoken or have left. So,
okay.
But if there are others here that have waited to speak and didn't sign up, I think it'd be appropriate to give them a chance.
I guess we'll take one more public testimony, and then we'll make a motion to continue this a later time, because we are running out of time on this meeting.
Really fast. Rob Furman, 11217 East Riverside Drive. There's been a lot brought up about these hillsides and the water issues. There will be no new water issues created by building on these homes. Whenever you do any development in the city, all that water has to be self-contained on the properties. Any of the hillsides that can't be built on, we already have the regulations that won't let that happen. So whether or not they're 9,600 or 2,000, or even like the senior housing over these areas where the hillsides won't allow it to be built, it won't affect that. This is only going to affect 4 or 5 properties. We're talking about maybe 8 houses total. So it's just to bring it in line with the other houses that have been built along there to allow more families to live there when it gets developed out. That's it. Thank you. Any questions? I don't think you would have any.
Any questions from the commission? Eric?
If we've got till 10:10, can we deliberate for that amount of time instead of extending the hearing at this point?
Sure, we can give it a try.
Okay. Oh, I can't imagine we're going to get through the other topic. That's why I'm suggesting that maybe we should push that to the...
Technically, you don't have to continue each of these items. You could open up for testimony on the North Riverside rezone. I'll pass on my presentation and take testimony from the one or two people who wanted to speak to that.
All right. I think we'll go ahead with that then. So at this point, if we've had people who have come and waited very patiently to speak on the fourth topic, why don't you come to the podium and state your name, whether you're a resident, and...
Thank you. Jim Jameson, 22329 53rd Avenue Southeast. This is my second time addressing the Commission. I've addressed the City Council on the North Riverside potential changes to accommodate code amendments to allow microbreweries to be present. It affects 16 parcels only. Proximity is fantastic for the downtown corridor, for walking traffic, trail traffic, and it is the gateway of where all the money and all the leisure exposure for Bothell residents heading to Woodinville. That's their pathway to get there, capturing them into Bothell, giving them a reason to stay. I've been in business. I have Foggy Noggin Brewing in Bothell, residential area now, limits my capacity, but one of the things about traffic, and it's a huge concern for me, I've had Public Works from Snohomish County do an analysis on our traffic, our speeds, and the amount of cars, and the hours that we're open is the least amount of traffic on 53rd Avenue Southeast all week long. It's also the slowest traffic all week long. And so it brings a harmony to the neighborhood. It's also gotten the neighborhood together. It's become a fantastic meeting place for the community, and we want to bring that to, we're going to keep that. We want to bring it also to another portion of Bothell where we can create another environment to bring the community together, create a great gathering place, and keep people in Bothell, because people who live in Bothell want to stay in Bothell. 16 properties, it would open up an opportunity to bring something that Bothell just doesn't have today. Thank you.
Do we have any other testimony on that topic? Please come to the podium, state your name.
Hi, my name is Paul Striesauer. My wife and I own a couple commercial buildings on East Riverside, 10408 and 10236 East Riverside Drive. We have been interested for some time in trying to extend sort of the wine corridor, which is, runs through Woodinville and into Bothell and East Riverside Drive. We have what we think is a pretty good facility for wine, beer, brewing, and tasting. And I think, as Jim mentioned, the use is sort of an off-hours kind of use. I mean, it's not primarily during the day kind of thing, during the week when we have the traffic issues. In fact, I could argue that it would actually potentially serve even take traffic off the road, as people going through there come in and get a beer, at the end of work, and they're off the road. There are some traffic issues on the road, but primarily, as was mentioned, there's two times when Cedar Park lets out right around 3:15. There's a big, huge surge of traffic coming down. It dies down. Thereafter, it actually completely clears in front of our property. And then again around 5 o'clock, a little before 5 o'clock, you have a big, bump of people, like commuter traffic, people coming through. I think it's sort of a decision here for, planning and the city council to make a decision whether or not they want to participate in the activities going around all around them. Bothell has made a big investment, obviously, in bringing people into the area, and yet there's a limited number of things to do here. This actually would be an attractant, weekends, but also, after hours during the week. And I see, a lot of potential positives with here. I mean, Bothell can decide that, if they don't allow this kind of thing, it'll continue to grow in the surrounding communities, in Kirkland and Woodinville, everywhere but Bothell. And I think it would be a great use, be something that would attract people to the area at times when we may not have a lot of traffic. And I would just like to see it considered.
Thank you. Okay, so at this point, I don't know if we've ever been in this situation where we ran out of time. Dave, can you advise me procedurally? What do we do? Continue this on January 7th?
Yeah, continue to the periodic plan and code update to January 7th, when we'll be bringing downtown and Canyon Park for initial review.
Yeah, I move to continue the public hearing, the 2015 periodic plan and code update to January 7th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Let the record show that the motion passes. At this point, nothing on study session. Old business? Any reports from staff?
No.
Reports from members?
Move to adjourn.
Second? Thank you.